Coming up on Need to Know, when you think of Rochester and its contributions locally and nationally, you likely think of Frederick Douglass and Susan B. Anthony, George Eastman and Kodak, and for some perhaps even that Rochester delicacy known as a garbage plate. But did you ever think of it as a fashion destination? The story of Rochester's once renowned garment industry just ahead. Also on the show, there's been quite a bit of momentum with our community's efforts to not only address racism, but to also help eliminate it. How young people are making social justice more than a conversation. It's all coming up right now on Need to Know. When you think of popular fashion and clothing destinations in the U.S., New York City likely comes to mind first. But did you know there was a time when Rochester was also renowned for its clothing and textile industry? The unique story of our local garment industry is the focus of a WXXI documentary premiering next week on WXXI television. Here's a sneak peek of the documentary, Tailor Made.
From Rochester's earliest days, much of its character has been defined by immigrants seeking a better life.
Every summer here, we are blessed with all the festivals from the different ethnicities that we have. And if you really look back at the history of why they're here and how they came to be here to enrich this community as they have, a lot of that had to do with the garment industry.
My great-grandfather immigrated from Limerick, Ireland in the 1850s. He was a tailor.
Small tailoring shops paved the way for large clothing factories that continued to bring in talent from other lands.
We have a large Jewish population, Germans, Russians, Poles, who can trace their roots. When you get to the first quarter into the first half of the 20th century, you start seeing a lot of Italians being recruited.
When my family first decided to come into the United States, their prime destination was Rochester, New York. They knew Hickey Freeman was hiring Italian tailors.
I'm proud that my dad and my mom, to a certain extent, was a part of this legacy, that it contributed to the success of Rochester as a city.
There was a lot of support systems within the community and the opportunity to start our American dream.
But in the 19th century, those first immigrants didn't always find a dream. They had to fight against unhealthy, even dangerous factory conditions. There were protests, strikes, and even one violent death. In the end, they forged an industry that would become a proud and dominant presence in the local economy. And it didn't stop there. Behind a celebrated motto, Rochester Made means quality, the city gained nationwide attention in the clothing business.
By 1920, the Rochester garment industry is the second largest employer in the city, ranking only behind the Eastman Kodak Company in terms of numbers of employees. And nationally, it's number 4 in terms of the production of men's clothing, behind New York City, Chicago, and Philadelphia.
It was a success built on dedicated work ethics brought to our city by craftsmen fleeing from countries torn apart by poverty, war, and political oppression. Once here, workers found employment, often before they learned to speak English, so they could feed and clothe their families.
My mother worked at Hickey Freeman. It was very important to the family because it was part of carrying the family load.
Even though the glory of that industry has faded to some degree, it has left a lasting legacy, producing the civic, political, and philanthropic leaders of today.
Those children became really leaders of the community. They became very important parts of our community.
How that came about is a dramatic story that is woven through the social and economic fabric of the city. As we look back over its 200-year history, it becomes clear that Rochester was, from its earliest days, tailor-made for the garment industry.
The story of Rochester's garment industry is a story of entrepreneurship, innovation, immigration, workers' rights, and more. And it's a story that can't be told without acknowledging the profound role of women in Rochester's clothing and textile industry. Joining me to discuss the influence of that role and how it has transitioned from the early to mid-1800s to today is Deborah Hughes, Executive Director of the National Susan B. Anthony Museum and House, Christine Radarski, Rochester historian and historical services consultant, and Nita Brown, owner and fashion designer for the Ghanaian-inspired design house Mansaware. And welcome to all of you. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
So with the birth of the garment industry in Rochester in the early to mid-1800s, what did that role look like for women early on? And I'll give this to you, Christine. What were their contributions? I'm curious if this was a time of opportunity for them, or were their contributions overshadowed, overlooked?
Well, certainly for women in the early period, a lot of that work was happening inside the household or in sweatshops. So women were very invisible within the field at that point of time, and their conditions could be very harsh, working late at night, being paid for piecework, so only being paid for the amount of work that they accomplished and the amount of work that met the standards of the employers who were employing them. But there were some women who made a significant contribution. Elizabeth Baker comes to mind. She had created an early pattern to make tailoring much more efficient and easier to do, and that would make a tremendous impact on our community.
I was going to say, how did that influence the garment industry, that standardized pattern that she created?
It had a tremendous influence in that suddenly you could produce clothes more quickly, sizes could be standardized, so it made it easier to get clothing out to the community. And you particularly start to see the effects during the Civil War, when there was a need to clothe the soldiers and get clothing quickly and get it to the front lines. And so at that point of time, you have not only the standardization of clothing, but you have the influence of the sewing machine coming into effect too, which has a huge impact upon women.
Let's talk about that. The sewing machine brought about a significant change, and I have to point out social change as well. So if we can kind of dig into that just a little bit, describe just what that change looked like. I'll give that to you, Deborah.
Well, kind of a background about that is, and one of the reasons Rochester was so prime, is you had to have electricity or else you were hand pumping. And so from the weaving to the machines, because we had power from the river, we had the potential to generate what you needed to establish small factories and locations. And the looms were a critical piece behind the garment industry, being able to manufacture the textiles also. And Susan B. Anthony was kind of tailor-made. Her family was in the textile production industry from when she was a small child. And at that point, a single woman couldn't be employed. They actually, in Susan B. Anthony's home, when she was a child, would have the workers living with them. So her mother would make not only breakfast, lunch, and dinner for the 7 children, but also for the 8 or 9 people, the young women who were employed in the mill. And so, huge change. But then we jump up to the time when we've got machines.
Right.
Needles are being manufactured, and you have the potential to do mass production, but also the potential to have huge problems with the conditions for children and employees who are working 10, 12, 14-hour days.
I'd love for you to just kind of go in a little bit in terms of the many roles of Susan B. Anthony. And she did have a profound impact in terms of women's rights in the garment industry. And if you can just kind of touch upon that a bit.
Yeah, she actually worked when she was about 12 years old. She had an opportunity to work as a spooler in her father's mill back in Battenville, New York. And so she had a connection with what was involved in the industry. One of the problems for people who were working in the mills was the lint, and tuberculosis was a problem. Susan B. Anthony lost 2 sisters to tuberculosis, and although that was a contagious disease, you were more vulnerable to it if you were in a bad working condition. So Susan B. Anthony, from her whole life, had both a sensitivity, an understanding of the industry, Her father actually ended up going bankrupt in the big crash of '37. So she understood a lot about labor. And so we're not surprised that in the 1860s, when she's publishing the Revolution magazine, she's saying equal pay for equal work, join the union, ladies, and really pushing hard, helping to start an organization called the Working Women's Central Association, so that women could have a voice, could advocate for better working conditions. And she was an advocate for the 8-hour day when it was still a 14-hour day.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, Nita, I think of you as a perfect example of the role of how women have changed. That role has changed significantly from then to today. You know, Rochester's garment industry, we did see a decline with and during the Great Depression, and there was this point in time when there were 5 main factories referred to as the Big Five. Only one exists today. That's Hickey Freeman. And I want to know, you know, Nita, as we kind of look then and then take a glance at where things stand now, how would you define the role of women in the clothing industry today in Rochester?
I think now women now set the tone. For instance, Mansa Wear actually, not only do I design, I also actually select the fabrics that I'm going to use to do it. Then I go back and then tell my tailors and the seamstress, this is what I want. So in that sense, I think I become the fashion trend. I set the trend, and then I do the production, and it comes back. And so when I look at it, I think now I have more freedom. I can dictate more what my hours are, what I do, more than 100, 200 years ago where you were being dictated to. But also as a woman, I also can see when I place my orders and my production orders, I can also see the impact. Although it's in Ghana, they are producing in Ghana, I can basically choose who I want. And so I tend to use women factories to do my work a lot. And so it can benefit, yeah.
Well, the fabric of the immigrant story is also a piece of Rochester's clothing industry. And again, another example of that, how do we see that type of, the interest in, I mean, you came to the U.S. and Rochester from Ghana when you were a teenager, and then you have an interesting story in terms of how that background and that ethnic influence, people are saying to you, essentially, we want what you have, you know, your style, we want it here, we want to see that influence here.
Right.
How would you describe, I guess, do you feel as though it's that what you're bringing to the table is so much more appreciated now in terms of that cultural influence on the clothing industry versus then?
I think so. I think it's not only because it's different or the colors are bright or they're brilliant, but I also think because of the quality, right? I'm wearing stuff that my mother used to wear 50 years ago. I mean, this particular jacket I'm wearing, I can throw into the washing machine and it comes out just as it is. So I think that with the combination of taking something from the quote-unquote old country and mashing it up with what we have here makes it very different and unique. But at the same time makes it part of the Rochester story, right? Which is what the brilliance of it is. So it doesn't, you know, here I am coming in from Ghana by way of Kodak, and then, you know, women in Rochester saying, we like the way you dress, we like the way you look. Why don't you sell it? Why don't you decide to, you know, manufacture and present what you have? So.
Well, one thing I want to touch upon was an interesting soundbite from Congresswoman Louise Slaughter, and she said she considered herself to be Hickey Freeman's Washington office. And she said, I'm the only woman representing this area, and I can't wear a Hickey Freeman suit because they don't design for women. And I want to know, there's so much talk about men's production. Rochester was ranked 4th in the 1920s in terms of men's production in the U.S. Why so much emphasis on the production of male clothing more so than female clothing? And when we look at our history.
I think part of it has to do with the role that women were playing in the community, and that a lot of women were sewing in the home for themselves and their families. And so the popularity of the men's clothing industry really was to suit the men going out into the business world. So that was part of it. But Rochester, it did grow up, the menswear industry grew up, but interestingly, we had a large shoe industry as well, and the shoes we manufactured here were primarily for women. So, you know, women weren't entirely neglected in Rochester in terms of their clothing needs.
Right. A very interesting conversation. I appreciate you being here. A special thank you to my guests, Nita Brown, Christine Rodarski, and Deborah Hughes. You can catch them in the premiere of WXXI's Tailor Made. That's on Monday, February 29th at 8 p.m. There's an aspect of our community's rich history in the clothing industry that continues to exist today. I'm talking about the legacy of the craftspeople who came to Rochester from around the world to work for some of the top factories like Hickey Freeman and Fashion Park, and eventually launched custom clothing shops of their own. Shops like Adrian Jules Custom Clothiers, that's been known for designing and crafting eye-catching suits for pro athletes and other big names. Joining me to share the secret of longevity after the decline of Rochester's garment industry is Peter Roberti, president of retail for Adrian Jules Custom Clothiers. It is great to have you on the program. Thanks for being here.
Great to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, so Rochester has lost its standing as being this leading figure in the garment industry, but there are stories like that of your father, and these stories demonstrate that longevity and that success, not just locally, but also nationally. Your father immigrated here from the 1940s, 50s, worked first for Hickey Freeman for 10 years, and then opened Adrian Jules Custom Clothiers in '64. And I'm curious to know, what did he tell you about the importance of quality? We know that motto, Rochester Made, means quality. How did he see that? How did that connect to his work?
You know, it started that, he started in Italy, he had his own shop in Italy. Then he came over here to Rochester and then came and decided that if I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it for myself. He had a dream and a vision and a legacy. And then my father, my mother were involved, and his partner Julio, and they just said, we got to build a real quality garment. The first year, after the first year of business, his accountant said, you're better off going back to where you were. You made $18. You're not making any money. And he goes, well, you know what that means? I got to work a little harder, and I got to produce a better garment. So it really comes down to the quality of the garment, and then the craftsmanship of the people that we got in our places that make everything so that it is a superior garment in the industry, so that people can appreciate, because people always pay for quality. Mm-hmm. They don't always want to pay for it the first time, but once you tell them and explain to them what the quality is, in the long run it just lasts longer, feels better, and it looks better on them.
So for over 50 years, your company has been creating these custom-made, they're high-quality suits, and they're not cheap. I mean, they're gorgeous, and they're also expensive. And I want to know, what's first? Tell me the secret to longevity. How have you made it through the decline of the big five? We've got Hickey Freeman left, and then also I've read that there's been a decline in custom clothiers in the U.S.
Well, the decline in clothiers in the U.S., there's really more probably clothiers, but there's less makers of clothing. So that's what we're part of the ones of the completely custom what we do. There's only a couple in the United States, and we're one of them. And then a lot of it's our research and development. I mean, we got a team over in Ridge Road. My brother's over there, my sister's over there. I have my niece and my nephew over there. My son is with us, and it's a team. And we believe that the team helps create this research and development and finding out what the consumer wants and what they need. And the quality, it might be more expensive in the beginning, but it lasts longer. So in reality, it's a less expensive garment because it always looks good on you. And your first impression, before you say anything, people judge you before you say anything, and it's really about the way you look and how you appear.
So in terms of that research that your team has done, would you say that you found that you at times need to adapt to the changing social and fashion trends of the times?
Yes, I mean, just like within the last 7 or 8 years, it's really seen that you've gotten a lot trimmer garment, it's a little more fitted garment, it's a shorter garment, but it's got to be wearable. So you see a lot of real tight garments, but a lot of guys really don't want that. They want something that's trim and more youthful. So we sit there and we spend hundreds of hours per garment to come up with a garment that's going to look and feel proper silhouette to the gentleman, that he looks good in it, he looks more youthful, looks younger, and feels better in it. So that real baggy garment of the 80s, you just don't see anymore. And guys aren't wearing that anymore. And the trends are sometimes, the fashion trends, we sort of stay away from the real extremes, because our client is investing a good amount of money in their clothing, and it doesn't matter if he's 20 years old or 60 years old. He wants something that's going to last and he's going to look good in and be presentable in.
I had a conversation with a tailor recently who said, over the last few decades, we've just seen this business casual has changed so much, and it's changed what our clients are asking for. Have you found that men are not dressing up as much as they did before, or would you say not so much?
Well, you know what? In the 80s, we're real casual. The guys were in flip-flop, T-shirts, sandals, the .com and whatnot. And now we've seen a change in the likes of what people want, between actors, movies, P. Diddy, Pitbull, all these gentlemen are getting dressed up, and we're finding that guys really do appreciate and want to wear nicer clothes because it's something different, because sometimes their fathers really weren't dressed up, but you got younger guys that are dressing up and they want something that's handmade, that's tailor-made, that's just made for them. And instead of going out and purchasing your Ferrari that's custom made just for you, they can get custom made clothes and they can pick out the linings and the details and the silhouette that best complements their body and hides a lot of their flaws.
So what goes into making a high quality suit? What's key? And so for someone who's looking for something, what should they be looking for?
In reality, you know, when you see a garment, you see a nice fabric and a nice line. It's really what you don't see. It's the foundation of the garment. It's the inside of the garment, from the canvases to the tapes, to the cotton, to the shoulder pad, to the Rollini in the shoulder area. These are all proper garments that are made this way so that when it's constructed, it's molded to your body. And the more you wear it, the more it's molded to your body and feels better on you. So when you first get it, you know, it's a piece of fabric, and then we make it into a three-dimensional garment, and then it molds to your body. It feels better on your body. And this is only done, you know, there's only a few in the United States, and we're, you know, American-based company, and it's big that it's made in USA. You know, we have 80 to 100 families that are all part of Rochester, and I'm really proud of putting this garment together. You know, and then the hand workmanship, the hand stitching, the hand buttonholes. You know, that's all important to that, we believe, to our clients, so that they get a better value and a better garment. And in the marketplace, you know, a garment that's really made for you feels better, looks better, and it's the little things that makes it look better on you. And if you do a quality garment, that's the important thing. A lot of guys are getting garments made overseas or wherever. That's fine. But the people who really want a quality, handmade, hand-tailored garment, they know there's a difference, and you can feel it in your hand. The fully canvas garment is a little softer in your hand. When you feel it, it just molds to your body.
Peter Roberti, a pleasure having you here. Thank you for joining me for this discussion. And you can learn more about the Adrian Jewell story. That's on WXXI's Tailor Made documentary. Again, that's premiering at 8 p.m. on Monday, February 29th on WXXI television. Well, Rochester has generated some momentum over the past few years in its efforts to create tolerance and understanding in our community when it comes to issues of race. The racial equity initiative Facing Race, Embracing Equity has worked to help generate conversations about racism through a series of film screenings and dialogues in area schools. Wilma Campbell, part of the Youth Leadership Committee for Facing Race, Embracing Equity, is credited for bringing the documentary I'm Not Racist, Am I?, to Rochester area high schools and colleges. Here's what she had to say about the importance of incorporating young people in the discussion.
If we don't begin to engage our young people early as possible in the conversation about race and how that affects our daily lives, then we don't have much chance of getting to the dream that is the American dream, which is a society in which there is equity, regardless of race, creed, color.
For districts that responded, such as West Irondequoit, the conversations didn't stop after the screenings. Today, we're highlighting the progress of this collective work involving Rochester youth in particular. It's all part of our American Graduate Champion series. Take a look.
Webster's predominantly white. I would say like at both schools as well, which is hard because you don't really get the exposure to people of other races or other cultures.
It's a scene you don't see every day in school. Students from districts throughout Monroe County all gathered together to talk about one thing: race.
People think that Native Americans are gone.
It's called the Student Summit on Race. The event was hosted early this year at Irondequoit High School.
I heard so many times those kids.
To be able to give them the opportunity to show us, adults, that they're going to take this conversation further, that they are going to, and I believe this, that this next generation has a better concept than some of us around basic human dignity and mutual respect for all human beings. And for me, that's the basis of our work.
During a recent Need to Know taping, West Irondequoit Superintendent Jeff Crane said after a Facing Race, Embracing Equity film screening and discussion on race in his district, authentic conversations on the subject had to continue.
I think if a white person says it, it's racist.
Be a non-racist.
So he invited the St. Louis-based project Gateway to Change and its student leaders to assist. He also sent an open invitation to high school students from all Monroe County school districts.
There's a sense of apathy, you know? Oh, racism's been a problem for so long, I can't do anything about it. Why am I here? What am I doing? I'm just doing this to get out of class. No, I don't know. You can do something. Like, who's going to be in charge in 10 years? Really, just think about it. Who's going to be in charge in that? That's us.
Gateway to Change launched after the death of Michael Brown in Ferguson, Missouri. The group travels the country working to empower fellow peers to become positive change agents in their communities.
I personally care so much about social justice, and it's something I just like to talk about in every single conversation I can. But usually every single person I talk to is not really open to talking in just a regular social setting. But when we create an environment that's structured, that has certain guidelines or rules of respect, then they are open to talk about issues of race.
The goal of the summit was to deepen student understanding of race relations in Rochester. Students examined problems that exist and propose solutions to make change.
It's just an extermination of ignorance. Not an extermination, but just an assault on ignorance. Because it's not really a problem of bigotry anymore. It's a problem of ignorance. Bigotry is the old generation, and ignorance is our problem.
Irondequoit High School senior Gina DePaolo tells me that all schools represented at the Student Summit on Race are currently working on their change agent projects. Her school is in the process of launching an interactive multimedia style blog run solely by students but targeting all age demographics in Rochester as it addresses the complexities of race and racism. She also says that student reps from the Race Summit are planning to reconvene in early spring to share updates and progress on their work. This segment was part of our ongoing Need to Know series called American Graduate Champions. We're highlighting individuals and organizations helping area kids succeed on their journey from preschool to graduation. To learn more, go to wxxi.org/grad. And that is it for this edition of Need to Know. I'm Helene Bianduti-Hofer. Thank you for joining me tonight and throughout the weekend right here on WXXI TV. I will see you next week.